everyone, welcome to week 2. So we survived the first week of the course. Hopefully you had a chance to kind of, establish some good habits that will take you into our future weeks here. As far as what we did last week, just a reminder, we did a discussion post as well as a quiz assignment. So this week it'll be similar to that. We will also have a discussion post and a quiz assignment, but we're going to add a significant assignment to our schedule. So that's our first milestone post. Before we get into what we will be doing this week, I do want to review some of the things that I'm noticing from our last week's post. So with the discussion boards, I am noticing that some students are not including all of the required information in their initial discussion post. So for example, if we go into our discussion post from last week, you can see that, there's the main point was for you to do some research on your own. So find an article in Science Daily and use the scientific method to be able to identify the different parts of whatever experiment the article that you chose is describing. And then the second part of that initial post was to determine if those results really were surprising to you or were kind of in line with what you were thinking. So some of you forgot to do that second part. So do make sure that you reread the initial discussion or the topic before you actually submit your initial post so that you don't leave out any of that important information. Another thing that I was noticing when I was reading the initial posts was that some students were, or actually most students, were not including in-text citations. So if you don't include in-text citations in your writing, that means that the reader, us in the class, assume that you're the one that knows all of the information. And that's actually not correct, right? Because you got the information from somewhere else. You got it from the Science Daily article. So you're essentially plagiarizing in that case because you're taking credit for other people's work, other people's ideas. So we do want to get in the practice of including in-text citations at the end of every sentence that includes information from a source. So as you are explaining the topic to the class in your initial discussion post, you probably, obviously read and reread the article over and over again so that you understood it well enough that you can explain it to your peers. But you're still pulling information from that source. Okay, hopefully you're not quoting because we don't do that in science, and you're not just copying directly from the source because that would be plagiarism. But you're still taking ideas from the source. Okay, so you might be pulling statistics that you saw, or a date in time, or something that was important about that particular article that you wanted to make sure that your fellow students understood. So for example, what was the hypothesis? Even though hopefully you didn't quote directly from the source the hypothesis, you did find their general their general hypothesis and paraphrased it in your own words, but then you still need to include an in-text citation because that hypothesis wasn't yours, it was the article. So you have to cite the article as the source for that. I did, for students that did not include in-text citations, in your grade, when you go back into your discussion post feedback, I did include a link to our library, the Shapiro Library, to show you exactly how to write out an in-text citation. Another thing that I was noticing within the initial post was that some students were quoting. Now, if let's say I asked you to tell me how to use your cell phone, now would you just bring out the manual and quote directly from the manual for me in order for me to learn how to use that cell phone? I certainly hope not, because if you've seen those manuals, they're really difficult to understand. So in these discussion posts, we want to make sure that you're teaching others, okay? So you're teaching others about the topic that you're researching. And in doing so, we don't quote directly from a source. We want to understand the information well enough that we can explain it, okay? So we're not directly quoting. And scientists, we don't quote anyway. You'll notice this week when we look at a scientific journal article, the O'Day et al. Article, there's no quotations in there, okay? There's this lengthy research article that, was published by a few authors, and none of that entire piece of work includes a quote. We don't quote in science. Instead, we take information from a source, we digest it, we might paraphrase it or restate things, but it's always in our own words. So never directly quote from a source, okay? And then, let's see what else that I noticed. With the references in general, once you have written your initial post, because these are research-based, you'll always have a reference at the end, a full reference. So do make sure that reference is in APA format. And for those of you that maybe did not include their reference in a correctly formatted, APA formatted way, I did include what your article should look like in APA format. So do take a look at that. And then I gave you a link to our library. So that's basically covers the initial discussion posts. And for the response posts, I am seeing quite a few students that maybe are not understanding what needs to be included in a response post. So what I'd like you to do this week sometime is go back into our 1-1 discussion, find your initial post, and then read the responses that were given, okay? Now one of the responses will just be from me saying, hey, nice to meet you, interested, blah, blah, blah. But take a look at the peer responses and see if when you're reading that response, would you want to answer that student's response? Is the student's response driving your discussion forward? Or is it just simply, just stating something and then that's it? So that way you can kind of understand what we need to include in a response post that will actually drive it forward, okay? So when you're writing a response, you want to make sure that you include original research, okay? So, take a look at the initial discussion post that you're going to respond to and think about, what that student presented to you. And then maybe pick apart one particular thing that was most interesting to you and conduct some additional research, okay? And then tell the student in your response about that research that you found or that discovery that kind of links to their initial post. That way you're driving the discussion forward. It's going to make it interesting for the initial discussion post person, okay? Because they're going to read, hey, this student found something about, what I wrote about, and they discovered something new about it, or they expanded upon that topic that I didn't give enough information on. And so that way, it keeps it going forward. So you'll want to respond to that post. Okay, so do include some additional information in your response post, other than just saying, oh, you did a great job, or that was interesting. Okay, that's not going to drive a discussion forward. So find a piece of information that student discussed and expand upon it and add additional research. So you will need in-text citations and full references in your response posts as well, because these are research-based. Okay, this is a 300-level science course, so we do want to continue including, research in both the initial posts as well as the response posts. So that's one thing that I do look at in your response posts. Another thing that I do notice some students forget is that, this is a professional setting, So when you respond to somebody's initial post, you include their name. You say, hi, blah, blah, blah. You know, I really enjoyed reading your initial post. I particularly got interested in blah, blah, blah. And I, you know, that made me want to research more about the topic. And I found in this article, blah, 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 that this happened and so forth. So you're always introducing, you know, you're always including the person's name. Okay, so this is something that you do need to get used to if you have not done so in the past. Okay, so do include somebody's name. I'll actually keep reminding you over and over again if you're not including that person's name at the beginning. Okay, it's just proper, you know, proper discussion format. We do include the person's name that we're responding to. Okay. Let's see what else about the discussion board post. So if you received a grade that you maybe don't think that you know, was something that you weren't expecting, that was a little bit lower than you were expecting, do read through the feedback that I provided and think about why you you know, what ways you can improve upon in this next post. Okay, so this next discussion. So, you know, don't just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. So do make sure that you're doing that. Let's see, a couple other things. So that's the discussion post. The only other thing that you had this past week was to read the first chapter of your textbook and take the quiz on it. So as far as the quiz goes, there's not much I look at other than the score, and I do notice that if you did not receive 100% on your first attempt, then you should be taking the second attempt. Okay, so if you got a D, 3 out of 5 or something, you really should be trying to do a second attempt just to make sure that you understood the information from that chapter. Okay, so I do kind of look at that when I'm looking at the quiz scores. So you will receive feedback from me for the quiz scores. So let's move into this week. So this week is a little different because we do have a couple of different things that we're going to be working on. So let's just take a look at that second module number 2. So as always, it's a good idea to read through the information presented before you get to the assignments. So we're going to be delving into chapters 2, 3, and 4 of your textbook, and this deals with more of the physical environment. So understanding a little bit about the water cycle of the atmosphere, how that relates to the topography, the climate, all of that stuff kind of coming together and influencing, basically we're doing this so that we can see what influences the organisms that inhabit the area. So let's take a look at our module introduction. So by the end of this week, you should be able to explain the primary factors that determine atmospheric and surface wind patterns. Particularly useful this week if you are in any area that is receiving some extreme weather. Compare the principal factors that control seasons. Describe how light, temperature, oxygen, and acidity influence the aquatic environment. So we'll get into a little bit of aquatic science this week. Discuss major factors that influence soil formation. Continuing from last week with the scientific method, use the scientific method to conceive and conduct a short practical field project. Use and interpret different graphical methods of data preparation and prepare a short scientific paper exploring data and discuss how ocean conditions and ocean-based food supplies are affected by climate change. So we will delve into all of these learning objectives, and by the end of this week you should be able to discuss all of these. Okay. So as far as the materials that we will be using, so we're basing this on the physical environment. So we're going to be doing a discussion post that will focus in on global climate change, but we're narrowing it to the ocean. So I'll talk more about that in a second. Again, you will be reading chapters 2, 3, and 4 in your textbook, and you'll be taking a quiz that, in this case, it's a 15-point quiz, not a 5-point quiz, because you have 5 questions for each chapter. So that adds up to 15 in the multiple choice quiz that you'll be taking. And then finally, you will be beginning the final project. So we will be gathering information so that we can develop the introduction section as well as the methods section of our final project. So in order to do everything that we need to do this week, we will be using our textbooks, so particularly chapters 2 through 4. We do have a presentation that you'll be taking a look at and watching about ocean currents. And so this will give us kind of some of the background information we need for our discussion post. We will also be watching a video on ocean currents and the role they play in our climate. So this is a pretty short video that you can watch, and then again that'll give you some background information for your discussion post. We have a topic of ocean acidification, the values of corals. These 2 articles will again give you additional background information that you can use in your discussion posts. Okay, and then the last 3 articles that we're looking at are more based on how to prepare for the final project. So how to write a scientific article, step-by-step writing guides for our undergrads in the biosciences. And then we actually have this article from the library that we're going to be using to help us understand this, how data was collected for our final project. Okay, so if we just take a look at it real quick, excuse me, take a little bit of time to, so this is a primary source. Okay, so when you're looking at a primary source, it's a lot different than the Science Daily articles we looked at last week. So you'll want to click on the PDF full text, and you might want to save it onto your computer for future use. But you'll notice right away, look at how long that title is. Okay, so this is definitely a scientific journal article, not just something we find in Science Daily. So it's like a sentence long. You notice the abstract. Okay, so you notice kind of the way that it's situated. You have an introduction section, and if I look in that introduction section, I don't see any. Nope. No quotes at all. So this is science. These are scientists, and you as a scientist in the environmental science or ecology course that you're taking, you do need to make sure that you're not quoting, okay? But look at all those in-text citations that they're using in the introduction, okay? Same thing when you're using your discussion posts to explain something, you need to cite where you got the information for within your text. Okay, and you can see how the format is for these in-text citations. So it's always author, comma, year, and notice it goes before the punctuation mark. Okay, you'll be taking a closer look at the methods section, because this is basically, this article gives us an idea of how the data was collected for our own final project. So you will get to familiarize yourself with this primary literature source. Okay. All right. So moving on. So we have our discussion, just like any other week, a quiz, just like any other week, and then we also have this additional milestone project that is worth a pretty significant number of points. So let's start on the discussion post. So the discussion this week is on climate change impacts on oceans. So that keyword ocean there, because a lot of times we focus in on climate change that is affecting land. Okay, so we think about in our immediate area, since none of us live in the ocean, what's happening to our land-based areas with global climate change. So this discussion, we're focusing on how climate change is affecting the oceans. So you will be, using the articles and the presentations that you were given, and you're welcome to use other sources as well. So if you want to tie in something that you understood from another course and you want to bring that, just make sure that it is based on the ocean, okay? So we're not focusing on terrestrial habitats in this particular post. So we're going to look at the climate change on the oceans, and we're focusing on things other than terrestrial. So we're not really interested in looking at things like our agricultural effects or anything like that. We're more focusing on what are some of those changes do we see to the world's oceans and why we should be concerned. So there's a two-part to this discussion post. So we want to discuss some of the changes that global warming will bring to the world's oceans. So that keyword "some" there means more than one. And the second part of your discussion post, why these changes should be concerning to us. So this first part is research-based. So you're going to be using the information that you gathered from various sources, whether it's the ones that we give you or the ones on your own, to discuss to your peers in layman's terms, without quoting, some of the changes that will bring to the world's oceans. Global climate change causes to our oceans. So some of the topics that we saw from just the articles and things like that posted in our module were ocean acidification. So if you're going to choose ocean acidification, well, what is it? Okay, so you need to explain it to your peers, as well as, how that affects the ocean life, okay? And then you might want to bring up, well, why do we care about ocean acidification? How does it affect us? So you have to kind of bring it back to everything like that, okay? And then, just like normal, you'll need to include in-text citations for, at the end of the sentences, that you include information from one of the sources. And then don't forget to include the full references at the bottom. So that initial discussion post, as always, is due by Thursday, midnight. Okay, and it's by your own standard time, not Eastern time. Okay, and then once you have posted that initial discussion post, you'll want to take a look at two other students' posts, preferably students that do not already have two responses to them, and take a look at their responses. Find something interesting that they stated, and then maybe again conduct some additional research and write a response that includes that research and the references in your discussion responses. Okay, so you'll respond to 2 by Sunday midnight. Okay. And then we have our quiz. So this is based on chapters 2, 3, and 4. So it's 15 points this time. So give yourself some extra time to look through the text and so forth. And then the final thing is the big thing. This is a 95-point project. I will be posting a separate video on everything you need to know about this Milestone 1 project. So just realize that with the Milestone 1 project, we will be making sure that we understand the methods section, particularly in that article that I shared with you, the Adeo, Watson, and Whitaker article. And because we're going to be using the ideas from that article to write our methods section. We will also want to include a brief introduction and method section for a milestone. So take a look at the video that I posted. It's a milestone tutorial, so I walk you through everything that you need to know about that milestone. So take a look at that before you actually start working on it, okay? So this is due by Sunday midnight. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to either post them in the general questions category on our discussion board, or you can certainly email me those questions directly. Okay, so good luck, and I will be looking forward to seeing not only your discussion posts, but those milestone projects.